English translation 57th contact, Wednesday 23rd June 1976, 20:54 TRs.
Today I have another question concerning the ice ages of the Earth. Something seems not to be clear about the last answer to the question. Look here. So I asked you the question. How many ice ages has the Earth gone through, and what exactly are these?
I have answered this question to the best of my ability.
Obviously not, because the questioner complained about your answer. Something must not be clear. Maybe I made the mistake of asking you the wrong question myself. I'm afraid I do not understand these things.
How were you asked the question? Do you remember it?
No, I do not, but I still have the note from that time. Here it says literally, in the more recent geological literature, one reads that there were 6 great ice ages in the last ice age end of the Tertiary. That is to say about 3 million years ago to the present day. In my opinion, it is just the 4 ice ages, like you said. Which is true. Werner.
The question is completely illogical and incomprehensible, if only because it contains a provably false assertion. I would not have answered this question because it obviously serves an unfair purpose in its confused form.
I know that, but I suspected that it would be illogical for you, so I put it in a logical form.
That was to be assumed, because your question was very logical.
Okay, now can you tell me why your answer was criticized?
What interests does the person asking the question represent?
I understand he's a hobby geologist or something.
Then any further answer is superfluous, because hobby scientists of earthly origin are just as stubborn and unteachable as trained scientists. They simply stick to their assertions, even though they are often wrong, but they believe they know. A further answer would therefore not be worthwhile.
You may be right, but I am also very interested in answering my question, because I can thereby expand my own knowledge. But so can all those who are interested in your statements, etc.
That sounds very logical. What do you want to know? Clarify your question for me.
As I said, I do not understand much about these things, but it can be inferred from various statements of the hobby geologist that geological science of the Earth accepts and believes to have established that during the last 3 million years there have been 10 ice ages on the Earth. The question concerning the 4 or 6 ice ages would have been only a trick question. So in my opinion, the question is whether there have been 4, 6, or 10 ice ages on the Earth in the last 3 million years.
The question of this person is very stupid and does not point exactly to a very pronounced consciousness-based activity. This is to be still noticed, because if they had asked the question in honest form and logically, then they would also have received an appropriate answer. His question, however, indicates that this person is very taken with himself and does not take honesty very seriously. How else would they dare to ask such a question in a lying and falsifying manner? That is why I will not answer the question on account of them, but because of you and honestly interested people, as far as I can, as I have already mentioned, on average and to some extent every 700,000 years, a great glacial period takes place on Earth, which corresponds to the value of a great ice age. Between these great ice ages there are different interglacial seasons, that is to say interglacial ice ages or small ice ages. Their cycle is about 350,000 years on average. The glacial periods usually cover 1/6 to 1/4 of the Earth's surface, while the interglacial periods cover 1/15 to 1/22 of the Earth's surface, although for both ice age types, enormous differences can occur both in relation to the area covered and with regard to the timings of the occurrences here and there. It is now easy to calculate from this that this misguided geological person, also with his new assertion that there have been 10 ice ages on Earth in the last 3 million years, again makes a false and misleading assertion without truth, because with 2,800,000 years, their 4 great ice ages and their 8 interglacial periods have caused new transformations on Earth. In total, it can be seen that 12 ice ages covered and changed the Earth alternately during the last 2,800,000 years, while the Earth is now preparing for a new interglacial or stadial period, which will reach its peak in about 160,000 years. The second subsequent ice age, for which the Earth must already prepare itself by terrestrial and extraterrestrial influences, finds its climax in approximately 500,000 years, whereby this will then again be a great ice age.
With that, you have answered the question exhaustively. One thing, however, is not yet clear to me. I have been told that the so-called interglacial or betweenglacial periods are simply a continuation of the glacial masses, which push very far forward and slowly retreat again. Your answer, however, says that the interglacial periods are real ice ages. Something does not seem quite clear to me here.
The question might be qualified because earthly geological science lives in the misconception that a planet has only one real ice age, which always repeats itself, and that the interglacial ice ages are only extensions of the glacials. With the repetition now, namely the ever-reappearing of the glaciers in the cycle of about 700,000 years, they have recognized the truth, but they, the scientists, are unaware of the average 700,000-year cycle. It is, however, completely alien to them that the cyclic interglacial periods, which we also call small ice ages, are also actual glacial periods. They therefore live erroneously in the assumption that the interglacial are only glacial ancestors. But in reality, this is not the case, because the interglacial periods are true cyclical ice ages, which have nothing in common with glacier migration, although these actually take place in a cycle of about 70,000 years. However, these are pure glacier advances and glacier migrations, which have an Earth regenerating effect, and which also occur due to climate changes. These glacier advances and glacier migrations can be described as small glacial, that is to say small glacial periods, but they can also be divided into 2 different forms, namely larger and smaller, with a period of glacial degradation prevailing at present, which scientists will also establish over the next 20 years. Thus, the last large glacier advance of this form took place on the Earth about 60,000 years ago and will be repeated already in 10,000 years, to which the forerunners on the Earth already now make themselves felt just by the forthcoming rapid dismantling of the worldwide ice masses, also in the Arctic and Antarctic. The small glacier advances or forays have a cycle of about 35,000 years, with the last such event occurring about 18,000 to 25,000 years ago. After the cycle can be calculated, thus with the next large glacier advance, also a small advance follows, whereby, however, the surfaces of the Earth covered by the ice masses will be in different places. That answer should really be enough. On the other hand, I do not know any more about it either.
That is more than I expected. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, the last time I asked a question, I forgot to ask Coney. He wanted to know if the doctors on your home planet also know the diseases that we have on the Earth. He probably means whether these evils are also rampant on your homeworld or simply present. He also specifically asks about the so-called cancer. He also wants to know if you have or know other pathological evils, or if you have simply defeated the diseases.
Our scientists have already defeated many so-called diseases centuries or even millennia ago, but even today, illnesses of a diseased nature, transmitted from earlier times, still prevail on other planets. But they are no longer deadly or physically destructive in any form. In the main, They are evils of a minor nature, such as colds, etc., which can also result in pneumonia and the like, but which we are usually able to bring under control very quickly if they do not degenerate. This is also the case with other evils. We are only human life forms like the inhabitants of the earth, so we are also susceptible to certain things of a diseased nature, but are usually able to control and heal them very quickly before they really break out. There are also certain evils with us which are unknown on the earth, but to which our science has also become master. In the case of the cancer, etc. you mentioned, which is embodied in a parasitic, malfunctioning life, it has to be said that fortunately we have long since banished and conquered these diseases. This, however, was only possible when our humanity and our scientists abandoned certain negating and negative attitudes and actions, etc., and began to think and act in new forms.
So that means you cannot tell us how we can fight these nasty diseases?
With this, you unfortunately speak the truth, because the Earth human must acquire the necessary knowledge himself or herself in this regard, because they grow in themselves through it and will understand many things only through it and learn the right manner of acting. But if we were to give them the knowledge, then we would be giving the Earth humans a method in their hands, which they in turn would exploit destructively and devastatingly, because the knowledge about fighting these diseases holds too many powers and too much power in itself for us to be able to designate it responsibly. It is still too early for the human being of the Earth to be able to possess this knowledge. Only through the ongoing and advancing evolution will they be able to integrate themselves into this knowledge and its power and might, if they will apply it in the given measure and according to creational laws and recommendations without exploiting it in negative form.
It is a devilish pity, but I understand your point of view, even if many will say that this is barbaric and megalomaniacal of you.
Only Earth human beings will do that who are not yet capable of thinking in good form, and because they themselves live in a barbarity that they are not able to recognize. Therefore, they will scold us barbarously and arrogantly, even though we are not so in any wise, and deeply regret that we are not allowed to provide help in these and certain other things. We do not have the right to influence and advance a human evolution more than is possible according to all creational natural laws and recommendations, and according to the respective level of evolution of a life form.
I understand. You certainly do not have to apologize. But let me ask you a stupid question. Are you also susceptible to the pfarnusel?
I cannot understand you.
Well, of course you do not understand. Now can you actually say chuchicheshtli?
I am still trying. But what was your question earlier?
Oh, I see. Are you susceptible to the cold too? That was my question.
I just said that we too have colds, only that we can fight them and contain them.
Oh yes, of course. That is what you said. I am sorry, I forgot again. Then now a somewhat unusual question. Does the dear Pilin Poily Pope Paul VI circulate in homophilic groups, or is this only a disparaging assertion of certain scribes?
This is a very unusual question, but it is based on certain rumors that have been spread recently.
You are right about that. Can you answer the question for me?
If it is important to you, certainly. Yes, the rumors are true. This was the case even before he assumed his deviously obtained office.
Okay, that was a guess. Now can you tell me what to think of the White Eagle Law DGE Association in Liss, England?
I do not know that name.
Could you investigate?
If it is absolutely necessary, but it does not carry tributes, if my assumption is correct that it is a sect or the like. Must it be so then?
I do not know, but I would like to ask.
Please, I would be grateful if we could then use the time in another form.
Okay. Well, before I forget, can you give me some autographs for the kids, because we forgot this last time?
My pleasure. On what should I write the greetings?
Here is a pad and a felt tip pen.
Thanks, but you can still keep asking questions.
Well, I still have a very special request, which is very much on my mind. My colleague Conrad seems to have been a bit strange lately. He's really spinning out. Is there perhaps the possibility that I have insulted him, or that he simply has a natural depression? Or are there other ghosts buzzing around, driving him crazy?
I know nothing about it, but I will do my best to find out.
Thank you. Then I have some other questions from Mr. Witzer in Nürtingen. Has one of your spaceships ever been left behind on the Earth?
We have not lost any spaceships on the Earth, because the question is probably related to that.
It is my own fault. I have to ask you this question logically. Has one of your beam ships, a reconnaissance ship or a telemeter disk, ever crashed since you returned to the Earth?
No, our equipment of this kind and those we have here are completely crash-proof.
Thank you. Then another question. Is it true that there are 10 to 16 glass coffins or glass shrines in the American Pentagon in which dead extraterrestrials are found, and which are supposed to be about 120 centimeters tall?
Something like this is unknown to us.
But is there a possibility?
Sure, but we should know that.
Do you doubt that statement?
It could be an assertion without any truth. Nothing is known to us regarding such an incident that would suggest a crash of a beam ship of foreign origin, in which 16 extraterrestrial life forms are to have been killed and stored in glass shrines in the Pentagon. In another case, however, something similar arises, with the deposit of extraterrestrial dead bodies, etc., which does not concern the Pentagon. So in the Roswell case...
Also good. What about Apollo 13, whose oxygen tank is supposed to have flown away from the device part and traveled into free space? What was the real reason for that?
I cannot give you any information about this because I am not informed about these concerns.
Then another question. How many humans of your race currently live on the Earth?
Overall, there are 114.
This is a quick one. What do you call your son Taget in your own language?
Similar to yours, namely Taggett.
Aha. And what is the diameter of your home planet Era in your Pleiades system?
It is very much like Earth's, as I explained earlier.
All right. Then a question that you have already answered sufficiently, and which must therefore seem illogical to you. Have some of you incarnated on the Earth?
You know that this is impossible because none of us died on the Earth, so you ask very illogically.
I already told you. I asked the question not from me, but from Mr. Witzer.
I understand.
The next question relates to the troposphere of Era. What gases and substances does it consist of?
It is almost identical to the Earth. The tropospheres of our worlds usually contain between 75 and 70% nitrogen, 25 to 29% oxygen, and 1% trace gases such as carbon dioxide, argon, etc. Era itself has a higher oxygen content with 32.4%. Traces of argon and other gases are found at only 0.3% and nitrogen 67.3%. However, this refers only to the planet Era, as I have explained.
That is good, but you are obviously talking about the atmosphere, although the question is related to the troposphere.
It is one and the same thing, because usually you call the troposphere the lowest layer of the atmosphere for simplicity's sake simply the atmosphere, which, however, viewed from bottom to top, is composed of the troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, and thermosphere.
Ah, so I did not know that. Unfortunately, I have a gap in my education in this respect. Thank you for the information.
This knowledge is not of great importance to you either.
Still, it is a lack of education. But how great is the surface gravity of Era?
Do you want to know all the data on my homeworld?
It could probably do no harm, because I am constantly asked about it. but unfortunately, I do not understand anything about these things.
I want to give you the most important data not yet mentioned, but then that should be enough, because these things are not of great importance for Earth humanity. The surface gravity is 1.00003 according to the Earth's basic measure, that is to say, slightly more than the surface gravity of the Earth. The density is 5.521, the axis inclination 22.99 degrees, and the equator diameter 12,749 kilometers, whereby the escape velocity of 11.19 kilometers per second is to be mentioned. This is the most important data that should really suffice.
It is good, girl. They were just interested in it.
But they are not of importance, and for the Earth humans is still unverifiable for the time being. The answering of such questions only leads to the fact that you yourself are accused of lying by the unreasonableness of earthly astronomers, etc., because their illusory knowledge and their desire to be know-it-alls does not allow them to recognize the truth. Thus, it is better not to consider such questions anymore.
Okay, you are probably right about that. But can you now tell me how many years your race has already mastered space travel? By which I mean your ancestors up to the most ancient generations.
It has already been 27 million years since our first ancestors built the first space-worthy flying vehicles. It was about 6,000 years before the Great Catastrophe when the destroyer breached into the home systems.
Quite a span of time. But tell me, do you know how old the SOL system is?
That is what we have been dealing with. The Earth is a middle-aged planet with 646,646,000 years since its first primeval matter agglomeration of ultrafine gas. Other planets are a little older and are slowly disintegrating, while Jupiter and Saturn only develop into planets if they ever do, before the whole system disappears again. The age of the Sun amounts to 810 billion and 73,810,073,000 years, whereby this information regarding the age is based again on the first origin of the gas, which formed at that time in the constantly changing and the becoming and passing as well as the again forming of the aligned universal material belt.
I think that should answer the question, at least I hope so. But now again a question concerning the dear George Adamsky. Has he ever seen a spaceship or a beamship, and are his photos all fakes?
Your question is again illogical, because I have already answered it several times.
I know you said that he never saw a beamship or even a spaceship himself, not even a reconnaissance ship or a telemeter disc. According to your information, he built various models, etc., in the size of approx. 30 cm, with which he then took his photos, based on the statements of a woman who once saw a beamship. But what about his pictures? Are they all deceitful?
Sure, it is undoubtedly so.
Well, you once told me that Adamsky was concerned before his death about attesting for posterity that he was a charlatan. According to your information, he would have written this down and signed it personally. Have you now found out where this document is, and is it possible that I can get hold of it?
You have to be patient a little longer, because we still have only a few clues about the person who is keeping the document. But it will certainly be accessible to you within a year.
I am looking forward to it like an arrow's bow. But I am just as excited to hear another answer from you. As you know, I possess from the tomb of Emanuel, alias Jesus Christ, a kind of flicker or mica. It looks like a transparent, multi-layered film. This material has now been analytically investigated by microscope at the Max Planck Institute for Scanning Electron Microscopy in Munich. The result is just as literal as I wrote it down here. Apart from sulfur and CO, O2 and H2O are also detectable. In my opinion, it is a crystalline substance of calcium sulfate. Sheen gypsum. This does not exist here. The remaining sample is still examined organically. Then you can get a better picture. The material is flammable. It burns odorlessly to a white powder. What I am interested in now is this. Do you know where this calcium sulfate comes from, or whatever it may be, and which does not occur in this form in our country? Do you have any idea?
You are talking about the glass-like natural material that was in Emanuel's burial cave?
Exactly. That is what I am talking about.
It was a gift from Gabriel the guardian protector, to his son Emanuel, whose foster father was Joseph. The gift was given to Emanuel at the age of 7, when his father Gabriel declared that it was a gift for the purpose of constant connection. This material served Emanuel as a capacitor. His father Gabriel brought it here from Alkion.
A tremendous story. Then I have a personal souvenir of Emanuel.
He had it all figured out.
You are kidding me, right?
I am not kidding about things like that.
It knocks me out, human child. The world seems to be crazy somehow.
But it is not so, because if someone leaves something behind for a later time,
You speak in riddles.
I explain no more about it.
It interests me now more than ever. Are you saying that Emanuel will once again obtain this souvenir as his own, from his father Gabriel?
I told you I am not going to explain any more about this.
You are quite stubborn, then okay, leave it. But one more question about you. You said that you are 114 human beings in total number here on the Earth. Is this number constant?
No, it varies from month to month. Often we are less than 50, then again more than 300.
Well, that depends on your duties, right?
Sure, but also with the transport of our food and other necessary things.
Of course, you have to eat. But now I want to ask a question about Agarta again. Can you tell me how big this underground city actually is?
Certainly. Agarta is built very deep in the earth in 2 parts. Each in a size of the city you call Zurich. That is to say, the Agarta under the Gobi Desert is about 1/6 smaller than Zurich, while its satellite city is about 1/4 smaller. Both cities are called Agarta, but have the additional names Alpha and Beta.
You are not telling me where the satellite town of Agarta Beta is.
With your question, you explain that you are informed about it because otherwise you would not know that the second city carries this name.
Of course, Askit explained it to me back then. But we have nothing about it in written form. So can you explain it again?
Sure, if that is so. Agarta Alpha is located several thousand meters below the surface of the Gobi Desert, but I am not allowed to give the exact location. Agarta Beta is also underground but is located below the Himalayas. Agarta Beta includes, besides the city itself, a huge area of cave systems, which are almost uninhabited today, but were inhabited by subordinate human beings at that time. The cave systems were the actual dwelling places of the people, while Agarta Beta was the administrative center, which in turn was under the higher command of Agarta Alpha, which stood as the absolute center of the 2 Agartas. Both cities were connected by a 200-foot wide and 130-foot high underground tunnel, which corresponds to a size of 65 x 40 meters, which is not very exactly expressed by me. However, the connecting tunnel was almost completely destroyed and not repaired during the Great Catastrophe of Gobi. Today, for example, there is only a narrow connecting corridor, which makes weak traffic possible.
So Askit told me. But now there is a man regarding Agarta whose name I have unfortunately forgotten, who has been appearing here and there for about 10 or 15 years, claiming that he is the Lord of the world and the supreme boss of Agarta. What do you think of that?
The existence of this man is unknown to me, but it is clear that he is a fraud. The residents of Agarta would never go out to the world in public because there are neither reasons nor interests. On the other hand, this would be far too dangerous for him, but also for Agarta itself and its inhabitants.
That should be clear enough. But now I have something again, because of the name Christ. Where exactly does this name come from, and what connections do they make?
Christ is the German version of the ancient Greek term Christos. This term is a direct reference to ancient ritual acts of mystical form. This means that the term Christos was used for all cultic and unreal actions as the designation for the cultic act itself when ointments and oils were applied. And when I speak of ointments and oils, then I do this only for the sake of better understanding, because in the old days, when these cultic and murderous acts still took place, no ointments and no oil were used for them, but small children and virgins were slaughtered bestially. Their blood was collected in vessels, kept liquid or thickened, and then the consecrations for the idols were smeared with it, whereby these consecrations were usually again human sacrifices. It was not until later that human slaughter and human sacrifice were slowly expelled, and blood was replaced by fragrant ointments and oils, while human sacrifice was replaced by animals, fruit and vegetables, etc., which has unfortunately been preserved to this day. The cults have received no change to the progress of evolutionary form, but have remained in the traditional evil, so an anointing or oiling in the present time still possesses only a ritual worthlessness. Therefore, even today, the term Christos or Christ means the absolute negative and evil with the numerical value 6666. This was also the reason why Emanuel resisted the name the Anointed when he knew that it would be attributed to him. It is similar with the naming of Jesus. Therefore, when the earth human speaks of Jesus, of Christ, of Christian or Christ consciousness, etc., then they act extremely negatively and conjure all negative forces into an Ausartenden form. Ausarten quinars to get very badly out of control of the good human nature. They should therefore never speak of a Christ consciousness or in similar word formations if they want to address that which is equalized, because by naming and accepting these word formations, they promote everything negative towards that which is Ausartenden. Earth humanity must therefore be urged that all word formations in connection with the names Jesus or Christ, etc., be erased and renamed to the actual value if they find a true name in the value of that which is equalized. So one may only speak of a creation consciousness and the like, but the knowledge in this regard should also be formed.
Thank you very much. That was very detailed. If you do not mind, I have another very unusual question.
I am waiting for it.
As you surely know, we have created the so-called pill for our earthly overpopulation problems. The question now is whether you also know something in this form, whether you swallow any medication or the like in order to keep the offspring rate within limits, which does not work with us despite the pill.
The question is indeed a little unusual, but it is very justified. No, we do not need these things, because in observance of the natural laws and recommendations, we align with their order and abide by the periodic rules.
So does this mean that you only make sexual love when this coincides with the female infertility period?
This is not quite so, because human life forms remain human life forms as long as they are bound to physical bodies. Sexual needs also come to light outside the infertility period of a woman, so that the needs must also be met outside this period. However, in order not to produce offspring, there are many natural aids which we always observe and apply, but this does not rule out the possibility that exceptions may come to light and offspring may be produced unintentionally. However, every woman of our race has the technological means to detect an unwanted pregnancy within 3 days. If this is the case, then natural preparations trigger early menstruation, whereby the fertilized egg is rejected before it is able to develop. Therefore, no abortion procedure, according to an earthly sense, takes place because no spirit-bearing life is destroyed by it. As you know, only at the beginning of the heart's activity, and therefore 3 weeks after procreation, does the spirit become established in a life form of a human being, so that, through this process of a prematurely triggered early menstruation, only the substantial basic substances are ejected and no life is destroyed. This is not the case with terrestrial humans, because their ability to recognize a pregnancy is still very limited, so that they are only able to determine a pregnancy when the newly created life form is already established and enlivened by the spirit. Destruction of the fetus in this state already means destruction of life in a murderous form, which is not in accordance with the natural laws and recommendations, except in real emergencies when pregnancy or childbirth endangers the life or health of the expectant mother, or when other compelling reasons exist.
Boy, oh boy, that is a long speech. But if I have understood you correctly, then you only use purely natural remedies for contraception, such as the one that you simply jump off the train in Oerlikon and do not drive right through to Zurich, right?
I find it admirable how you can describe and paraphrase these concerns. Yes, it is one of our natural remedies.
Well, I do not want to ask what the other means are, because surely they are very diverse.
Sure, but the harmony between man and woman is necessary in all events. Otherwise, it would be unpleasant for one or the other partner.
That is understandable. Unfortunately, it is very difficult to talk about such matters, because the human beings of this world are cursed in this respect, and the Pope Twerp plays an important role. Especially in Switzerland, this topic is practically taboo, because here these things are particularly strongly affected by the laws, but also by moral apostles and the sectarian fringe of a special kind. Yet it is precisely these moral hypocrites who, in public, have the greatest snout and curse and condemn everything that is connected with sex and a naked body, but who, behind them and in secret, lead a licentious, debauched, and immoral life and revel in sexual orgies. In short, they play the decent moral personalities in front of the public to hide the fact that they are really the greatest pigs.
Unfortunately, that is how it is. I am aware of that.
Then I am not alone in my opinion. Now look here. This is a letter that Mr. Ries from Munich sent me for you. It is about a certain Lord Surya.
Give my thanks and greetings to Mr. Ries. I will deal with the letter as soon as I can.
I have 2 more questions from Mr. Schutzbach. He has read a book called Veritane Geheimnisse Betrayed Secrets, and came across some things. In Italy there is said to be a castle called Castel del Monte, which was built by Emperor Frederick II of Hohenstaufen. Is that true? The second question refers to the first, namely that there should be an inscription with the following values in or on this octagonal castle. Ds, IDCA, DB10, CLPSHA2. In addition, I would like to ask what this inscription means.
I am not aware of anything like that. I have no knowledge of it, neither of such a castle nor of the mentioned inscription.
No big deal. But now a question that concerns us all. You know how we earthworms grapple with so-called professions. So our question now just refers to what you have actually learned as a profession.
I understand, even if we do not interpret our activities in your form. But when I have to talk about a profession, it gets a bit complicated, because I have learned several of them according to earthly human concepts. My tasks are closely connected with my learned knowledge, which relates to spiritual education, coordination, technology, archaeology research through time travel into the past, earthly religion, politics and economics, earthly history of humankind and various other things, for which I am taught and trained in every single value. It is not the same with us as with you, because you learn only 1 or 2 professions or fields of knowledge, because with us we usually master 12 to 30 and more fields of knowledge.
Man, that is the kind of head I want.
You are already a very great exception among the Earth humans.
Aha, now you start planting flower gardens again. I will remedy that right away. You told me that Quetzal will give me another report this week about Amada. So far I have not received anything yet.
But this will still be the case today, because in about 10 minutes, Quetzal will personally come here and explain the necessary things to you.
Great, I will be happy to see him again. We were able to take photos and films of your ship about 10 days ago at night. We got quite good light effects on the films. It would be very useful if we could roll one more film. Would that be possible?
Simyase's beam ship at night demonstration. Photo, Guido Moosbrugger.
This has become a somewhat dangerous concern because we have drawn the attention of many observers to us with the generation of energy burns. But it should still be possible to set it up again. I see you have your camera with you. I will therefore speak with Quetzal. He will certainly grant it again. After that, however, for reasons of prudence, we must stop such demonstrations in the future, at least for a longer period. We are also no longer allowed to demonstrate in such an official manner as we have done in recent months. It is really all becoming too dangerous. Therefore, if we demonstrate something again today, perhaps it will be the last time for many months or even years.
Too bad, but it cannot be changed, can it?
I am afraid not, and that is final. We dared too much.
It is too bad, really. Are there actually no more sightings in it at all?
Probably from very high up, but not in the form we have done in recent months. But in this respect, we still have to clarify everything exactly. Therefore, the last word has not yet been discussed about it.
At least something.
Sure, you will have to settle for that. But what I would like to ask now, were you really on the move last Sunday with one of those dangerous combustion engine flying vehicles? Unfortunately, I could not monitor it because I was otherwise engaged.
Of course, we were racing around through the air in the box for 2 hours or an hour and a half, and 360 things at that. The wind turbulence had thrown this combustion box around a bit, but it was very interesting on the one hand and very fun on the other hand. I really had the chat about the bucket getting thrown around. For all I care, it could have been much more, a really adventurous flight against the elements where we would have been more upside down. Although I imagine the box jumps and shakes not so strongly in nice and calm weather, but you never stop learning. I then tried very easily to test the responsiveness of the box in the controls by pulling the bucket up and down. Then I took a slight right and left turn, but I was content with a 70-degree deviation if I had orientated myself correctly with the panel compass. What I had to deal with were the curves, because I performed them excessively strongly.
You are very sensitive in your sense of orientation and balance, which is controlled by the inner structure of the auditory organs. You are also very close to nature and therefore react very strongly to changes of any kind.
I would like to make a blind flight in such a box in order to be able to one-time experience how I react to it. It just does not make sense to me that one can suffer from blind flying or balance problems.
This has to do with your closeness to nature and your pronounced sense of reality. However, it would be better not to try such an experiment because these combustion engine aircraft are dangerous.
It is really not that bad. They may be a bit primitive and a bit cumbersome, but in these tubs you can really move through the air and grin down at those who are trying to walk through the landscape. I really enjoyed seeing some climbers scrambling up the steep mountain paths as we whizzed over them with ease and without effort.
That is very unrefined of you.
You see, that is joyful gloating.
It was not what I thought. I also understand that you are joking with me. But you are still a barbarian because that is the only way I can explain your constant thirst for adventure.
Well roared. After all, I live in a world full of barbarians, so I have to be one myself. I am even quite happy about it, because at least I experienced something.
You should still be careful, and so should everyone else. These howling monstrosities just are not safe enough.
Just remember that we have to be content with these combustion boxes, because we do not have anything else. We live in our world with our technology, which is still quite primitive. In your opinion, we may still be damned barbarians with flying suicide boxes, but we are very cursedly proud of them, and imagine that we have achieved something with their production and control, even if everything still looks like dwellers of caves and hills. After all, we are only in the early stages of air conquest, so you really cannot ask much yet. Probably you just cannot understand it because your technology is so much more advanced and secure than ours.
It certainly is, you may be right about that. Our earliest ancestors also moved through the air with extremely primitive combustion motor devices, but today it seems to us to be very adventurous, barbaric, and outrageous. But look here on the screen, Quetzal is coming. Now wait a few minutes.
After a little more than a minute, Quetzal actually lands next to Simya-Sei's ship, and after a short welcome, he comes for the purpose of his visit.
Unfortunately, it was not possible for me to send you the requested information earlier. I was busy with very grueling problems. In order to be able to serve the matter better now, you should ask me appropriate questions, which you obviously have in your hand, already written down.
Exactly. These are the questions. They refer to teleprojections cited by Amada. It is probably best if I read it to you the way Amada wrote it down for me.
It will be fine, but afterwards, I have to explain some things to you that are only intended for your group in terms of knowledge.
We can yet straighten that out, for we simply cover things that are only intended for us when we copy the reports. So I want to ask the first question. Amada writes it this way. Are these large ships, which I see again and again, with a large superstructure and many cabins, simply spaceships or even large capacity ships? How many people are on a ship like this?
This description of the objects is neither one nor the other, but quite simply very large emigration ships with an average diameter of 120 kilometers, with a capacity for human life forms of around 1 million. These gigantic ships serve exclusively for emigration purposes, especially when a world is very endangered and destruction is to be considered. These are the same giant migratory ships that were used by our ancestors at the earliest times when they came from the Lyra Vega region to Earth and later also settled on our Pleiaren constellation. Their external shape and size have been maintained since then, but they have been subject to constant innovations of a technological form, so they are equipped today according to the state of the art. When Amada received our teleimpulses as teleprojections, she saw everything in an extremely reduced form, because she would not have been able to grasp and overview the gigantic size and the reality of it.
Aha, then she practically saw something like models?
No, that is not quite so, because she sees the projections as quite large. What is the second question?
She goes on to write, what do these creatures mean who, on Thursday night, climbed out of a wonderful blush in the sky, each time after a bolt of lightning that was not followed by thunder, got out of a vehicle and descended on UFOs stationed in the vicinity of our house, on or over trees, etc.? They were all dressed in white robes, and they were all looking at me. One climbed down a staircase in a long white garment with wonderful glittering silver stars on the robe. He went under my window, and then went to a UFO stationed under a tree. From there he looked up to me, while more and more other beings in white clothes and in whole groups came here.
This phenomenon is a teleprojection on our part, for the purpose of triggering memory. The beings wrapped in white clothes embody our ancestors from a period of approximately 70,000 years ago, who came to Earth at that time, but who did not live in fixed houses, but in their free-floating beam ships, which they had stationed mainly over forests. Hence the UFOs seen by Amada and floating above trees, as she says. Between the ships, there were radiation belts of visible nature, which served as connections between the formations and lit up at intervals. These are the flashes Amada saw. The man dressed in the wonderful robe with the adorning stars was the Ish-Wish of this emigration group, whose most distant descendants still live somewhere on the Earth as their own smallest group of former extraterrestrials, but whom we have not yet been able to find by any means imaginable. In the meantime, we could only find out with certainty that Amada, from her old personalities, must today be a very distant descendant of the brother of the former Ishwish, which means that this group of extraterrestrials, who as mentioned were a part of our ancestors, must have mixed with terrestrial people here on Earth and forgot their actual origin. And to find out how these connections extend now, and how and where today's descendants of these ancestors live is one of our tasks, and that is why we also are making an effort for Amada.
This is really fantastic. Then here's another question from Amada. On Friday evening, a vehicle came out behind the moon, hanging on two clouds, and floated down onto the roof opposite our house, which was suddenly covered as if by a white blanket of snow. An old man with white glasses looked out of the window. The vehicle remained only briefly on the roof, rose again and floated past my window, while the old man looked at me insistently. Then it ascended again to the sky and disappeared behind the moon.
This teleprojection is the representation of the brother of the old Ishwish to solve further memory factors in Amada. The beamship or vehicle, as Amada says, floating between two clouds means the representative position of the old man as Ishwish.
Good. Then the next Amada question. Other white figures sat again on the opposite balconies. A man in a white robe was lifted out of a UFO by two men in gray working clothes and lifted onto a stage where he sat down and looked up to me. Down in the courtyard of the neighboring house stood a bunch of people in gray working clothes right next to this stage. One of these men detached himself from the group, lit a star, and hung it over the garden railing. More and more people came in large beam or spaceships and settled on the surrounding roofs. Then came again beings, in white garments and in vehicles which looked like thick tree trunks, and had large cabins. With these vehicles they drove directly into an already present big ship. Could these white creatures be sons of heaven?
Our ancestors and us in former times were called sons of heaven by the Earth humans. This teleprojection is a reference to the past, the present, and the future. However, I cannot officially give the interpretation, because these are exactly those things that I am only allowed to explain to you and your closest group, as I indicated earlier. A revelation of my declarations may take place only after 1980.
Okay, is the explanation taking longer?
It will take some time.
Then I can do this later in the report as an additional page only for our internal group.
How am I supposed to understand that?
I will simply write and print the information you give me, just for our internal group separately, and hand it over to our closest members only.
I think that is very reasonable and correct.
Well, that reassures me. But now I would like to ask a question first. It seems that Amada is very much involved with teleprojections. Is there not a danger that she will be overwhelmed?
Is that really the case?
Of course.
It is not good if she is too busy with it, because otherwise she starts to suffer from imaginations, which would not help the whole thing and would get Amada into trouble herself. She should take note of it, but should not deal with it very much.
But she's already very busy with it.
This is not good, and we have to do something about it. See to it that she stays in your group next Saturday, so that you can bring her close to our ships, because we will come back for that. In a certain distance from the ship I will stop you as you proceed, after which you will stay there with Amada. Then I will call you myself, to come to us while Amada waits. We will take her in our control then. I do not want her to be afraid, not even of the teleprojections. I will give you more instructions on Saturday. Stand by with Amada. But now I want to give you the explanations. Top secret until 1980. The white figures Amada had seen on the opposite balconies are teleprojections of the old venerable ones of long-gone times. These are the beings who begat and ruled the white earthly human races. But there are also their descendants among them who in peaceful form pushed forward and determined, up to a certain value, the later earthly development of humankind. So they are the true ancestors of the white earthly human race, while the people in gray working clothes, the folk, as Amada calls them, represent earthly mankind in all its colors and races of today, standing next to a large platform. This platform symbolizes the foundation of truth, knowledge, and wisdom, onto which two gray-clad earth humans lift a man dressed in a white gown, whom they have previously lifted out of a beamship. After they have lifted the white-dressed man onto the stage, one of the two men takes a star and lets it shine in bright light, in order then to hang it brightly on a fence. These pictures symbolize the present. This is the call of time and evolution in the sense of knowledge and dissemination of truth in the Aquarian era. The venerables, dressed in white mentioned above, are and were the origin of all human life existing on the earth today in their known form. Everything was determined and directed and partly pre-programmed by them, but this never elevates them to hierarchical forces or powers, because such values do not exist. However, due to the willfulness of the earth humans, who are many races, many things failed and went in very Agarta, got very badly out of control of the good human nature, and negative tracks. Thus it was determined by the decision of the old venerable ones in foreseeing of the coming events that at the time of the Aquarian era a new prophet should appear, who already would have been so in former times as other personalities had, who walked the earth and patiently fulfilled his very heavy duty, true to his mission. So it had been foretold by the venerable ones that at a certain time the same prophet would come again incarnated in a new personality, begotten by predestination and born by earthly parents, as was the case in former times, but begotten at that time by the seed of a son of the heavens. The incarnation of the prophet in the Aquarian age is represented by the image of two beings dressed in gray, a man and a woman, two earth humans, lifting a man dressed in white out of a beamship and putting him on a platform from where he will spread the knowledge of truth, wisdom, and love. The great multitude, as Amada says, represents the mass of earthly humanity that hears and receives his teaching, while his light of wisdom shines and radiates, symbolized by the shining star suspended from the fence. This action takes place through another gray-clad being, an earth woman. This is Amada herself, for she makes the star shine and hangs it on the fence, which represents the barrier between knowledge and ignorance and between truth and untruth. The hanging or placing of the star on the fence symbolizes the state of the prophet who has overcome the barrier of ignorance, so he is able to fulfill his mission. But the doing of enlightening and putting the star on the fence also shows the state of Amata, her important role which she has to exercise in connection with the mission fulfillment of the prophet. Because through her connection to our ancestors, which we have meanwhile established, she was destined to help the prophet in the form of her teleprojective connections and contacts to us, to be able to testify through her teleprojective connections and contacts to us that we exist and maintain actual contacts with the prophet himself. This, however, is only of importance in the narrowest of circles through which the basic values in every relationship are developed and disseminated. This should remain a secret of the inner circle until 1980 at the earliest, because it would not be of value and not of good to reveal this secret too early. This is fundamentally the interpretive value of this important teleprojection. In Amada's important interest, it should also be mentioned that certain projections of these things are unavoidable for us, because only through them can we track down these very old facts anchored in the memory banks and memories penetrating very deeply into her subconscious, which can provide us with valuable information about the connections that are extremely important to us. But Amada should be careful not to deal with the projections more than necessary. On the other hand, we have also noticed that Amada is burdened with misleading teleprojections from an unknown side, which obviously serve a lower purpose. We have known this for some time, but have not yet been able to produce an analysis. So let her exercise caution. We will continue our efforts to find out where these strange teleprojections come from and what their real reasons are. However, this task is made very difficult for us because the teleprojection impulses are so distorted that we cannot locate their origin. But now I want to interpret the last part of our teleprojection, if you are also informed about it, because also this is important for you to know, about which you should also keep the deepest silence until the year 1980. Consider that the religious powers of the earth are always anxious to maintain and preserve their power. Thus they would act maliciously and treacherously against you if the interpretations given to you here were made known to them. They would not shy away from terror, murder, and other evil acts of violence, and would pursue you everywhere and try to destroy you. The further appearing figures with white clothes are the earth humans of the future, who through the teachings of the prophet will knowingly become wise and defeat ignorance in any form, whereby they will build large but still primitive spaceships, with which they will fly to other stars and planets foreign to the Sol system for the first time after a very long time, and establish contact with other races of humans in the universe. This is represented by the flying tree trunks with the large cabins that fly into an already present large ship. This is the interpretation of this teleprojection, which we sent out by teleimpulses for certain reasons, and which was apparently actually received by Amada. In and of itself, these concerns would not be a mystery if the return of the prophet had not already made his appearance. It is this fact, however, that must be concealed and kept secret for certain circles at the present time, because if it were known at the present time, a catastrophe could not be avoided, especially for the sake of religion in the Christian sense, which, in its irrationality, would use the worst means of violence to destroy the mission of the returning prophet and rob him of his life.
A huge thing, I think. But may one know where this prophet now lives, what his name is, and where he had already appeared as a prophet before, and under what name?
You know him very well because you embody this person, and we suspect that you know that better than we do. But who you used to be in other personalities and where you stayed would be too premature to say, although there are already assumptions in your group about this.
Oh my goodness. You do not have to say anything else. It is enough and I am not getting it.
You think very quickly, but keep quiet about it. It is also time for us to go now.
I have had enough of your last remarks. Goodbye. I have to think about that first, but whether I eat it too, that is a second question.
You will. Goodbye, dear friend.
Bye, girl.
Goodbye, go in peace.
Why would I not?
It was a little too much for your modesty.
I guess you could say that.
It would be better for you to take an interest in certain aspects of your past lives and their personalities, because this would make many things easier for you, even in terms of revealing your secret, which we cannot simply deal with. If you have the need, then call me. I will be very quickly with you and let my remaining work rest.
Thank you. You are very kind. I will remember that and also worry about your illusion. But what about another film?
You want to film again?
If it is possible.
It has become very dangerous because we demonstrated too much during the last months. But one last time, I could at least take responsibility for it. Be ready for the weekend, Friday or Saturday, maybe Sunday. I cannot give you a more exact date yet, because the next days we will be very busy. That is why we have to send you tonight's report during the night.
Oh boy, there will be another long night.
Unfortunately, there is nothing else to be done. And please take your time to deal with the personalities of your earliest past, the personalities of your previous lives, because you cannot conceal the truth in yourself over the long term. Although I am increasingly of the opinion that you know more about it than we do, and that for reasons unknown to us, you playing at something through which you want to withhold something from us. But even if you have been resisting the given facts for years, if that really should be the case, which I doubt, the things of the past in reference to your old personalities correspond to the truth, for which you have enough evidence as we know in the meantime. I really do not actually want to say these things. Even Quetzal before also did not, because we know your attitude and your direction in these things, and therefore do not want to burden you with our suspicions. But since you think very quickly and precisely in combination with logic, you have evoked the issue yourself to speak about, which is why you impelled us to talk about it. Now you must finally deal with these given things and acknowledge the truth that we know something about you that you want to conceal, for which we have had enough evidence in certain individual things for 3 decades. We have often explained to you, however, that your modesty is far too great, which was also the case with the personalities in your previous lives, which is why you do not want to acknowledge the facts now, or rather not call them into the open, despite the fact that they correspond to the full truth and cannot be eliminated by denial and dispute. You know very well that at that time you spoke with a person very well known to yourself, with an important person in the past, who also lives in a new personality today and thus at your current time. Only you repress this fact in your head. Now finally think about it rationally and stand by this irrefutable truth, for there is nothing more for you to do in this important factor.
You are all crazy.
You know very well that this is not the case and that we know the truth as well as you do.
Okay, damn it. It is driving me crazy. Then the salad is baked and fried for all time.
You will protect it because you are much too duty conscious. But it is really now time we have to go. Goodbye, dear friend, and go in peace.
I could really use that, especially now. Goodbye, great master.
Remember that you can call me and I will come very quickly if you need my help, even if I assume that you alone will solve your problem. Farewell and keep peace in you. Goodbye.
You whisper around like sermons of church blessings. I'm not a baby, damn it.
You delight my mind with your words, because you prove to me that you can cope with everything.
Okay, then it should be just like that. But finally go now. Otherwise you will get a spanking from Mama, because she has to wait.
I understand very well that you are being aggressive. It is this very good medicine for you. But now goodbye, dear friend.
Take care, everyone. It is really enough for me now.